All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to this amazing event and this great workshop. I think you're going to find some really relevant insights. I previewed the slide deck before. Some of it may remind you of MBA economics class, but most of it is really amazing industry expertise. And there's a lot of pearls of wisdom here. So please welcome Ajit. Give it up for Ajit.
Hi, folks. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Can you see if the clicker works? All right, great. I used to live in Berkeley for the last 4 years, from 2020 to 2024. I was never invited to Haas. I never stepped inside Haas. And after I moved to Vegas. I'm like 2 times I've been invited to Berkeley for some reason or the other. So I'm very happy to be here. I've walked and jogged across, on that street a lot. So happy to see what it looks like inside. My name is Ajit. I'm the founder of Monetization. Monetization is a pricing consulting firm. I've been in the Bay Area I was in the Bay Area for 15 years. I just moved. I worked at companies like Medallia, Narvar, Twilio. Narvar and Twilio have actually done pricing projects. Twilio, I used to run pricing for their contact center product line. Now we started Monetizely. We started with building a product, but we've pivoted into doing consulting. There is a course I teach with Jan Pasternak. He used to be head of pricing at Zoom, Squarespace, DocuSign. So he's much more in the pricing expertise arena than me. So we have this course that we teach. If you're interested, you can look it up. We also published this book. This is the second edition of my book on pricing a few days ago. So please buy it, rate it. We'd be happy to. And we've kept the Kindle pricing very low right now. It's only $2. So go for it. So that's a little bit about me. I'm happy to go through this. We have a lot of time. I think we have 75 minutes. So my goal is to break down pricing step by step, and we'll go through a fictional exercise. But before we do that, I just wanted some raise of hands. I just wanted to understand what you're looking to get out of it. How is pricing relevant to you in your roles? And then we can, feel free. I will understand what you're looking to get out, and we can have a dialogue. It doesn't have to be just me speaking to you. Go ahead.
Hi. So I want to create a product, but I don't know how to price it.
Okay.
That's what I want to, how to think about it.
Okay, so basically 0 to 1 product management. Okay. I have some thoughts on that, but you would be surprised about my thoughts on that. I'll cover that as we go. Go ahead.
So I'm a B2B product manager, so I've worked on pricing for hardware products. But I would really love to understand how pricing works specifically for SaaS and how the different lineup strategies work. How do you kind of come up with different, basically segmented pricing and persona-based pricing?
We'll cover that. And by the end, if there's any questions that are still pending, happy to answer. We'll cover all of that.
Can I just add something to what I said?
Yeah.
So the 0 to 1 product, right now we are doing customer interviews, and one way to get a sense of pricing is we are asking them, hey, how much would you be willing to pay? And we've seen such a wide variety of answers that we're not going anywhere. So that's where the question's coming from.
Okay, yeah, totally. Please.
So I work for a VC fund.
Okay.
We're seeing a ton of companies come out with usage-based pricing.
Yeah.
So actually completely separate from the traditional SaaS model.
Yeah.
And so we've got some conviction that that's going to be the new model. But
Yeah.
I'm curious.
That is why I've picked the case as an example that I've picked,
Right.
and I create a fictitious example. So we'll go through that. Let's go ahead.
So I'm just curious from an entrepreneurial perspective, are unit economics going to be determined by pricing, or is pricing going to determine unit economics for your product?
They're related. But they both impact each other. Yeah.
Doesn't work. So coming from a company that failed at usage-based pricing and had to switch back to ingest-based, so I'm very interested in drivers when to use a particular model.
You started with usage-based and you moved to what?
Ingest. So basically, pick a proxy.
Okay. Ingest is like usage too. It's some sort of metric.
Sort of metric
Yeah. Yes. Okay. We'll cover that. It's a whole thing that we'll cover. Please.
So I work for a hardware company, and I know that this is about SaaS pricing.
Yeah.
But I'm actually interested to know how to price a product when you scale your product from 1 to n and not 0 to 1.
Yeah, hardware products have a little bit of a nuance. I think the summary I'll give before we enter the presentation for the hardware questions is that hardware products have high cost of manufacture and it's predictable. But the beauty of at least application layer software has been that it's all. There's a term from the movie Wolf of Wall Street. It's all a fugazi, because it's all like the costs don't scale that much. So you have a lot of ability to sell the way you want to. And so like the trailer for this talk is that pricing isn't really a math activity. It's more of a positioning activity for software. But when it comes to products which have a high cost of manufacture, then it becomes more of a mathematical and margin activity. And the costs have a much stronger bearing, and that limits your ability to do crazy manipulation on pricing. And the spaces are also more commoditized generally.
So I'm interested to hear how, if you're launching a new product line or a 0 to 1 product, how to price the initial version such that you don't turn away potential customers, but you're also not anchoring yourself to too low a surplus that you're capturing down the road.
Could you rephrase the question?
So if you price it too low, that might anchor the price in the future.
Got it. Yeah, it's a classic founder mistake. It's not a founder mistake. It's a classic founder decision that they at some point need to change. That's what I'll cover in the goals section. Please.
So I want to learn about how do I price something that is saving time, because people don't associate time with direct revenue increase, and it's really hard to price like an insurance service that will save them issues later on. So how do we price those?
Okay. Please.
I'm a product manager at a public B2B SaaS company, and there's two things we're considering currently that I'm just curious if you're going to touch on. One is breaking out additional product lines as add-ons rather than part of our core bundle, and a second is using discounts. We don't do a lot of that, and we've kind of been investigating.
Those are two slides I actually removed from the deck because it was getting longer, but I'll touch on that, and if I don't touch, please ask me. I have thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I worked for within B2B ads, and right now we're facing the problem of we have some like a pay-per-seat model for some of our tools, and we're also trying to package ads. So the question I have is how do you package those two different pricing methodologies together? One's auction-based and one's seat-based.
Got it.
How many credits you give?
Got it.
How many seats do you give away?
Got it. So that question, as well as the usage-based, ingestion-based, are in the pricing metrics section. So let's go there, and if your question still doesn't get answered, I'll answer it at the end. Okay. So we'll start, and please feel free to pause me. We have a lot of time, so we can answer all the questions as we go. And I'm going to ask you questions too. All right, so we'll start with the impact of pricing, the role of product management, the exercise that we're going to use as a proxy to go through the 5-step framework that we have for pricing. So impact of pricing. So there are OpenView Partners is a company that OpenView and Bessemer have produced a lot of content on the impact of pricing. There are two slides, but one of them I removed for this, but both studies point to the OpenView study surveyed companies from 1 million to greater than 50 million ARR, SaaS companies. And the minimum impact of a pricing revamp exercise was around 12% on ARR, and it goes as high as 47%. In the Bessemer study, the median is 20%, and it goes as high as 80%, regardless of the size of the business. So you could even have 100 million business, 300 million business, and they've seen similar trends in the impact of pricing. So generally, when we consult with companies, if they either they haven't looked at pricing in a while, if they have, or they haven't looked at pricing ever, generally pricing is not a thing that gets optimized very often. As a result, there's always some money left on the table. And by the time somebody gets interested to discuss pricing when we are talking to them, they realize that there is money left on the table, and they're now figuring out how how to capture it. But most exercises do yield in that impact. That's why I actually changed my career from product marketing to pricing, because this was more tangible. But the other important thing is that there is an increase in net dollar retention as well. So one of the biggest myths that I see that executives in big organizations hold, or people in general hold, they think pricing is about the price point. Pricing is not about the price point. Price point is the last thing we're going to talk about today. It's the easiest thing to change, it's the easiest thing to manipulate, but that is not a structural lever in your business. We are going to talk about pricing as a way of alignment between you and your segmentation and you and your ideal customer profile. If the alignment is good, then the customer is happy. When they win, they pay you money. And if they don't pay you, if they don't win. And so they feel like you are a service that works with them, right? And so as they grow, they're going to be happy to pay you. But if you have a metric that is poorly selected, if you have packaging that doesn't fit their needs, then they're very likely to churn. So it's not a price point thing. It's actually an alignment mechanism for how you're going to match the customer's growth. And the last step is actually a sort of local optima problem of the selection of the price point, which we can discuss. And this is the issue, I would say, from a B2B setting. Most business schools, I don't know, could you give me a raise of hands? In your curriculum, are you taught things like conjoint analysis? Okay. It's, but you're not, so all of pricing, in my view, is the basics of product marketing, product management, about who is your customer, what do they want. But the business school literature has inherited a lot from FMCG products, B2C products, where the price point manipulation is much more important because the packaging is very broad, right? If you're going to sell Netflix is $12 for something and maybe something else for the family. I don't even watch it nowadays, but they have one price point. If they have one price point and they're trying to sell it to the whole of the American consumer as well as other countries, they're going to have to optimize that number. They don't have other levers to play with. But if there is a B2B company, you have so many levers to play with. You have the amount of packages that you sell, the add-ons that you sell, which metric are you going to charge, how are you going to bundle that, the question of the ad spend, and if there is some other metric. So you have so many levers to play with that actually gets you the leverage. In a regular B2C company, you don't have that many levers, and price point becomes the only thing. When price point becomes the only thing, statistical methods become more important, right? So that is the difference in B2B and B2C. And so a lot of our discussion will be how do you think of it in a B2B context? We will touch on things like conjoint, but those are things that are absolute last resort things that we do because they're so expensive. And they yield results only in certain cases. So role of product teams, at least, this is just from what I've experienced in my career. So most of my career has been in the product marketing box. I've interfaced with product management. Now, before I go into the role, I would say that in my career, I've seen two types of PMs. There have been feature managers and there have been product managers. And I am sorry to say, but the large part of Silicon Valley is feature managers and not product managers. Feature managers are people who project plan features, who are told by the CEO what they have to build, who are not empowered to talk to customers. And as a result, what pricing decision is this person going to make? They're not allowed to talk to customers. They don't know what segmentation is. When they talk to salespeople, sales coughs at them. You cannot do pricing in that environment. You have to be an owner, true owner of the product. You have to have a seat at the table for strategy. You have to talk to customers. You have to understand segmentation. That's when you're able to make a decision about, okay, what should my product's pricing metric be? And that will come from when the PM is coming from a owner mindset, right? This is my product line. I own the P&L. But even when I was at Twilio, by the way, if Twilio is hearing, listen, right? We had 50 product managers in our product line. Nobody was empowered. And some people were empowered, and leadership changes. There's so much churn. There's so much trash. No one person has control of their entire product line. They're so segmented out that they're working on minute features. These are people getting paid $500,000+ a year. The job has become clerical, right? How are they going to make a pricing decision? It is impossible. So you have to become an owner and think from that mindset. And if you are able to, you have to make room for yourself in an organization before you can do that. Right? That's the meta importance of how the role needs to be. Right? Be the true product owner. But given that, we are looking for product managers to define the product market goals, understand and refine segmentation, and basically understand for the different segments what are their needs. Because only if you understand truly what the needs of your segments are, can you derive good pricing and packaging. The other thing that is if it's a startup, it doesn't matter too much, but if it's Series B, Series C, or bigger company, then product has to liaise with engineering to actually instrument a lot of these things. Like we were talking about different usage-based pricing metrics. There's going to be packaging that has to be created. There's going to be feature flags. And product has to influence engineering and convince them, hey, this stuff needs to be built because this is what is going to make us money. And if they don't have visibility into this, they're not going to be able to influence engineering. Engineering will never build this stuff. So in reality, and that's happened, I realized this when I was writing my book, most pricing people told me that, hey, we have done the study, we've done everything, we have published the result, but the product team doesn't listen to us, they don't think pricing is important, and as a result, engineering doesn't think pricing is important, so the meter is not been implemented, it's been many years. All big organizations have similar stories that the best pricing strategy cannot be implemented because pricing strategy is not off there in the wild. It actually requires systems and engineering to implement. Pricing strategy needs for you to meter the usage-based metric, put feature flags, send it to the billing system, send an invoice to the customer. If the invoice is incorrect, then you have to find a way to handle that. Sales has to quote the customers. There are different systems. I was trying to build one of these systems, like a CPQ product before. So there's CPQ, there's billing. There's so many systems nowadays that you have to architect to make pricing work. So another thing we'll cover is that the best pricing strategy is not the one that is going to actually work because you may not be able to implement it. However, but this is the critical role of product management. If a product manager understands everything, then you can actually make money, and making money involves building stuff to make that money. And then the other sort of landscape of pricing is that you have to engage with product marketing, who will then train sales. If sales does not understand pricing, it's dead. If RevOps is not able to implement pricing, it's dead. FP&A cost, you have to work with finance so that they understand how the new model works, especially in the case of these new AI products, which are very costly to run. And then there may or may not be a pricing team, then they will end up managing the price book for the entire organization, and there are more operational things that they have to do. But somebody has to do the strategy work. Either product does it, or product marketing will have to do it. And if these two teams will not do it, then sales does it. There are many organizations where sales does this job, and they don't do a good job, by the way. But they still, if you're not going to do the job, somebody will. Any questions? Okay. So the 5 steps we're going to cover today are. This is what we teach in the course. This is what I use with all of my clients. First, we want to make sequential decisions and not these decisions all together. If you try to make the decision all together, then you will start by discussing pricing metric or which meter I want to use. But then you will make the decision first, and then you will remember to make the segmentation decision. So first start with your goals and segments. Understand where you are in your company life cycle. Who are your customer segments? What is your ideal customer profile? ICP unclarity is very common in most SaaS companies. And it's inevitable. As the business grows, the ICP actually shifts over time. So writing it down and having everybody aligned to it is important because people will have different thoughts about what their goals are, and that communication of goals often doesn't happen.
What is ICP?
Ideal customer profile. So you may say segment is enterprise companies and you may have certain attributes, but ICP could be an example customer, right? This is Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has X million in assets, so many branches, blah, blah, blah. That's an ideal customer. You will create that ideal customer profile because that's an archetype based on which you will start to align people, right? This is the type of company that is an enterprise customer for us. Any other question? Okay. Based on segmentation, now you understand the needs of the segment, who the segments are. Then you design packaging. Packaging is like if you buy a car, 3 series, 5 series, 7 series. That's a package. And then there are things within that. Pricing metric is everything that we were talking about. User-based pricing, named user pricing, concurrent user, any type of meter that you want, that is the metric. So you first choose the packaging, and then you select the metric of alignment. These two are the most important two decisions. And then is rate setting or selecting of the price points. Once you have said, I have this package for you at this meter, now this is how much I'm going to charge. And you will have a hypothesis around it, and you can test it as well. But it's easier for you to change this. Especially in a B2B company, it's the easiest thing to change because there's often discounting involved. So you can actually start higher, see what discount is happening, and then come up with the price point. And finally, operationalization, as I was talking about the importance of implementing pricing. If it is not able to be implemented, then it may not fly. All right, so for the purpose of applying the things we learn in this, we are going to look at a company called Acme AI, and we're going to go through the first 4 steps. Acme AI is a new contact center product. It is much better than existing products in answering consumer questions. So it's sort of like consumers ask a question, it will automatically solve the problem. It will deflect to agents as needed. So the front end becomes completely AI-based and much better than today's technologies. We will assume that they have 3 segments: SMBs, mid-market, and Fortune 500 companies. They recently raised seed funding. This is about their size. So they have about 8 clients, and they're creating their first pricing strategy. They have very high, this is important, they have very high cost because they're using the OpenAI API to actually provide this service. And however, at the same time, by using this product, it results in a dramatic reduction of agents. What compounds this is that in this industry, the number of agents is what contact center software is sold on. So now you have to figure out, for this sort of innovative technology, how do we set pricing and packaging? And there are some confounding things within that, right? So I will be asking you questions based on what concepts we learned. There is no wrong answer, but it's just something for us to have a discussion. All right, so the thing I want to emphasize on goals is that the evolution of goals. And sometimes people don't really know how their goals have changed. So how many people have read this book? It's a Valley classic, Crossing the Chasm, Jeffrey Moore. I think Jeffrey Moore even came to your university a couple of days ago, right? Anyway, so this is his cycle of innovation. There's an early product, it finds early adopters. Then there is a chasm stage, which can last for a long time before it hits this tornado stage where the market flips and it starts to move to the business where the cost of customer acquisition reduces and you become a thing, right? Before CRM was a category, you had to tell people, hey, you need this software. Now when companies start, they're like, oh, I need CRM because it's become a thing. And later on Main Street, when it's after IPO, and then later on commoditization happens, you get disrupted, somebody else comes. So your goals keep changing. First, you want market share. First, you want somebody to just try your thing. And it can't be very expensive. It has to be something that you de-risk the customer so that they try it. Later on, the goals become revenue predictability. This is more Series A, Series B. You want to start to monetize what has brought you success. And it is important for you to have some predictability in your revenue, and that's how your business is going to grow. Margin starts to become more important. When customers start to flip to you, think Zoom when the pandemic started. The whole market started to come to them. What was important for them is not to make more money. What was important for them was to sell as fast as possible. So sales efficiency becomes more important because revenue is a factor of how fast you sell and at what price point. And then finally, commoditization. So think of a company like DocuSign or other companies sort of in that segment. They may have had a lot of initial success with something, but later on, the nature of software is always deflationary. Software always gets commoditized. You will have competition, and then what worked for you before may not work after 10, 15 years. You have to keep innovating. So these are how the goals of the company will change. And then as a result, your pricing and packaging strategy will inherit from the goal of the company. If you are focusing on market share, you may want to do more usage-based pricing. If you're focusing on revenue predictability, you may want to start unbundling your offers so that you're trying to monetize as many different pieces of value as possible. If you're trying to optimize for sales efficiency, you will start to actually go back and simplify your packaging again. So there's this yo-yo effect of pricing and packaging that happens from simplicity to complexity. And then commoditization, you may actually then expand again, but from a more defensive position, that you may create more entry-level offers that are similar to what your ankle biters are creating, right? So there's going to be this expansion contraction for different reasons in pricing, and the reasons map to the company goals. So at the outset of a project, you must recognize and have a conversation, what are the goals? All right. So I already told you, but just so that you're following, what should be Acme AI's goals right now?
Obtain market share.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll keep going. This is the obvious question. All right. So we move to packaging, right? So by the way, let me know if I'm running out of time or where I am. I'm assuming we have a lot of time. The most common mistake I see people make when it comes to pricing and packaging is they copy this template, which is called good, better, best. And a lot of pricing consultants even recommend doing this, which blows my mind. But what is the problem of let's say you're a product manager or a founder, and you copy, like, okay, everybody does 3 plans. I'm going to create 3 plans. I'm going to shift my features in these 3 plans, and I'm going to put a pricing page on my website. What is the issue in doing this? Complexity? Okay.
You might lose some value in between. Like there might be a customer who would want between advanced and business first.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
You're constantly having the discussion of like, why can't we pay the lower price? Like
Yes.
you have to defend that all the time in
Yeah,
the sales cycle with
yeah.
bigger customers.
Right. So if you don't look at goals before and you started here and you just slotted features, what is likely going to happen is somebody who was a mid-market customer, let's say the middle plan aligns to a mid-market customer, but they are not finding the thing in this plan that they wanted. They are finding the thing in this plan. They are going to, these are in my book, I talk about Gainsight. This is from real examples. And there's some other case studies in there that is the same dynamic is described. They will move to the top end plan and then they will severely discount it. They'll talk to the sales team and they'll say, okay, I want this for 50% discount. And the other features in the top end plan will become shelfware because they were not going to use it. You've sold it already, which means that you cannot upsell that customer afterwards. So you blocked your upsell, you reduced your average selling prices, and your sales team got pissed off. So this is the problem of blind packaging, right? Packaging should be always tailored to who are you packaging it for. And packaging need not be this, right? So you have a spectrum of options. This is a little bit of a simplified slide from our course. But on the left-hand side, you have this black box version, right? I want to go after the whole world. I am Netflix. I have one size fits all. Because I want to go after the whole world, I don't really care about sizing, how many shows are you going to watch? Let me give you a tailored offer. They don't care. They just want to go after the whole world. But on the very right side, this is like, for example, a company I used to work at, Medallia, a long time ago. What they want, if you're selling to, let's say, financial services, insurance, and the bigger people, you want to capture all of the upside from every single customer. Maybe they're like 20 to 50, like 30 to 50 retail banks. There are a handful of these companies that pay a lot, right? And so for those companies that are going to pay you a lot, or insurance carriers, you want to really create bespoke deals with them so that you can maximize the size of the pie for every deal. And these deals can last a long time. So it's a spectrum that you're dealing with, and you have to figure out where you stand on the spectrum, what type of market you have. Go ahead.
So if you're selling into a domain-specific product, maybe you have a few different enterprises that could be customers of your product, and you're almost selling into like a few buyer situation. So how do you really figure out how much surplus is there to capture and quantify that?
That is through the course of selling that you will figure out. There is no easy quantification to this. Like, you can get proxies. How much do these people spend on other similar product lines? You may do some market research. People use services like GLG. I've used GLG before to do similar research. But you want to figure out how much is there spent for other things, right? Government contracts. If you sell a SaaS product to government, it will never be, hey, this is $100 a seat. Like, they will like, what? So it will be, they buy a certain way, they spend a certain amount, and you structure it. You always structure pricing to expand how much money they have to pay. Unfortunately, that's what happens. Good.
Wouldn't this cause comparison between, say, one comparing with two, or them talking to three, and then finding out what price they're getting?
At some point, you have to standardize more, so it can't be wildly off the chart. But that's the point of the packaging, that I sold you, customer A, I sold you 1, 2, 3, 4, but you are bigger, the next customer. I sold you 1, 2, 3 to 8. So when they compare, I'll say, well, I sold them 4 more things, I sold you 4 less things, right? So the idea is that you're breaking down your offering into as many granular pieces and then valuing them separately and then selling to them. I'm not saying that piece number 1 is a markedly different price for both customers. That will get you more in trouble. But the idea is that if I have chunked out the product and service in many different ways, then I can stack them, right? Based on their need, you can stack them more. It will take you more time. So sales efficiency will be lower, but you can stack and get the value. So I'm just saying this is the two. Okay. These are the two ends of the spectrum. Most people are not at the very end here. In B2B companies, they're not on that side either. But PLG companies are going to be more on that side. They are going to have a larger market that they are attacking. Think of Slack, right? They're more on that side of this row. But if you have a bigger B2B enterprise product, maybe only look at Fortune 500, Global 2000 clients, you'll be more on this side. So you may be closer to good, better, best, but you may want to create more bespoke offerings within that, right? When we were at Medallia, I don't remember that we had any specific packaging. We were more closer to this side, and we were able to sell multi-million-dollar deals to banks and much cheaper deals to, let's say, retailers. And it's the same software product. You will add some services here or there. And this is the point I was trying to make about application layer software being more of a Fugazi, that this is how you create create money. Because you're trying to create those services, and the product doesn't change that much. You're trying to create and design offerings that work for different people. And this is the truth about software. So products do not change that much. Bigger companies spend a lot more money for using the same software that smaller companies make. This is also why software is commoditizing very fast. Once somebody buys something, after Medallia was here, Qualtrics came along. Qualtrics was like 80% of the price or much cheaper price. I don't remember their price, but they became a much higher valuation company than us. Both of companies had their own cycles. But somebody's going to come from the bottom and eat up that business once they see that your margins are that high. So this is the spectrum. But these are the principles I'd like you to keep in mind. Are the packages well tailored for your market segments? Do they allow you to capture upside from your high willingness to pay customers? Are they differentiated between each other? If the packages are not differentiated with each other, then you will have down shopping, or you may cannibalize yourself. Are they designed for scalability and growth? If beyond a certain point, a lot of the companies like 20 million and above, their revenue, a huge part of that revenue comes from existing customers. So you have to design packaging for upsell and cross-sell and recognize that existing or new customers' needs are going to be different and expectations will be different. At Narva, we did not change our existing customer price book. We offered them much more flexibility so that they could upsell more easily, because you don't want them to pay 2x the price if they want just some feature, right? You probably want to be more accommodating to existing customers. That will keep your NRR high. So we're going to, this is not something we're going to solve right now, but I'm going to giving you a very fictitious example. So let's say for this Acme AI, this is an exercise I go through in all of my consulting projects. So if I have features on the left, so I just came up with features, right? Smart AI responses, AI task automation, sentiment analysis-based AI routing. I just came up with features of this fictitious product. You will first do a needs mapping exercise to your segments, right? What does SMB want? What does mid-market want? So S, M, XL, this is t-shirt sizing based on their needs. So this is a very rough and dirty way of explaining needs mapping. So you will have a conversation and figure out what capabilities do these segments really need, and then you can convert them into, based on the principles I had showed you, a packaging structure like this. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess just a quick question on the previous slide. When you said Excel, does that really mean propensity for them to pay, or how important
Needs.
is that feature?
How important it is to them.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is more art than it is science. Once you do, you will have needs mapping on one side, you will have your understanding of the segmentation on the other side, and then you want to figure out, how do I capture upside? Because I know some people can pay me more. How do I keep them differentiated? How do I make sure that they are going to grow over time? And then you're going to combine all of that into your packaging, right? So some of there are more things included in the enterprise plan. Between Essential Pro and Enterprise, there is enough difference so that an enterprise customer was more likely to auto-select being an enterprise. Yeah, go ahead. No. This is you getting into a room and trying to understand and t-shirt size the needs of a segment. This is not conjoint analysis. This is just you, as a product manager, recognizing who the segment is, what is their need, and then saying, okay, I think this is what they need, this is how they're going to grow, this is what they will need later, and so on, right?
Just to highlight on the earlier questions, so I understand, with this chart, multilingual support is very high value to enterprise.
Yes. So this is one example of how I do it. You can come up with your own approach. I'm just trying to give you more of a window of how I do packaging, right? I gave you the larger meta examples, but when I get into workshops, I will first understand all of the feature set of a company. I will have discovery calls with their team, and then we will do a workshop with multiple companies. Their product managers and sellers will be on the same call, and I'll say, okay, these are the things. Let's just tell me what is more important or less important, and let's align on, then they'll tell me a story. I went to sell this to them, and this is what happened. And then the product manager will tell some hypothesis about a new feature that they're building, and then we'll create a new lineup based on the discussion. So this is the input I get, and then based on our understanding of who will pay more, what things they will pay, like now this option for custom LLMs. This is something that will cost a lot of money if I'm going to create a custom language model for you. This anyway, I can't include any place because it will eat into my margin. So there are some things I have no option but to keep as add-ons. Some things I'm going to keep an add-on, like 24/7 customer support, and with some sort of SLA. You can sell that as an add-on for the. Yes, go ahead.
With these add-on things, right? So you've given an add-on only for the enterprise plan. How do you make that decision? Why not give the add-on to a pro plan?
This is completely subjective. Okay. It is completely subjective based on the principles I showed you before. Right? I'm trying to create differentiated plans. I'm trying to create something that will do the MVP job for each plan. Like if you don't buy anything in Pro, my mid-segment, my mid-market their MVP job should be satisfied. Right. But there will be some portion of those people who will want to pay me extra, and I capture more upside by using the add-ons. So add-ons let me capture more upside and also pave the way for their growth over time. Right? So that's how I choose. My add-ons are going to help me monetize more. My add-ons are going to give somebody more flexibility. So that's why I strategically choose how many add-ons. So there's going to be when I was at Narva, I was debating, I had different marching orders from my CEO and my head of sales. CEO was told by investors that, hey, you need to simplify this packaging a lot, and you have to sell faster. Well, but that was really not our go-to-market motion. If we simplified it too much, customers could not buy because there was a certain amount of bespoke work that happened. At the same time, my head of sales, they had reached, I think, 30 plus million in revenue just doing whatever sales wanted. So she definitely knew what she was doing. And she was very resistant to being forced into one option or the other. So I had to sit with the sellers and understand exactly how do you sell into different type of accounts, what add-ons, what customization do you do, and find a middle ground between, one, we need a consistent sales packaging, but it needs to be something that offers enough flexibility for certain type of very routine sizing things that happen in a sort of customer engagement. When we did that, the sales team said, okay, now this works for us, now we like it, and it achieved the goal of standardization and speed and sales efficiency for the CEO. So these are dynamics in an organization that you will have to be navigating around. Complexity is always, there's complexity and there's always on the other side efficiency, right? So you're trying to play against that. And with more complexity, you may get more revenue, but then you may lose out on efficiency. Okay. So this is what I told you, but based on what I told you about this company, would you take any other approach, given the data points I gave you? Any comments? Yeah.
So there are some companies who actually publicize their good, better, best offering, and they call it like PLG motion sometimes. Yeah. And then there are companies like who hide it, and then not hide it, like internally they don't publish it. Like, what's your point of view on those two different approaches? Yeah. Because I've seen these PLG motions when they're public also kind of working. Yeah. So when does one choose one versus the other?
Yeah. It completely depends on your segmentation, and based on your segmentation will depend on your motion, sales motion, and your sales motion will then dictate whether you're PLG or sales-led. If you have a big market, maybe small price point, you're selling to, let's say, developers, and you want to reach a lot of developers, you're likely going to have a PLG motion so that you can reach a lot of those developers. And it's more of the product will inherently be more, first you try it, then you start using it. And on the sales-led side, that motion is more commonly used when your ICP are bigger enterprises. There is a buying persona, there is a separate, there's a champion, decision maker, economic buyer, all of those things, and separate user. So there's some complexity there that a sales team has to navigate. The end user is not, many times, the end user will not just sign up for those sort of products. You have to sell through the buying committee, in which case you're not going to have a PLG motion. So that is the motion. Like, that is what will determine what motion they have. And if you have more enterprise customers, you may not want to publish your pricing because there's going to be a lot of variance, and you will have to do more bespoke things for them that just the website will not be able to serve. But if you have a large market, you're trying to reach a large market, then by default, you're not going to be using sellers for all of that. You're going to be like Slack, for example. You come and start using Slack. And in which case, it's like pricing is public, just use the pricing. But it is, again, a decision that has to be made with an eye to who is my market, how do I want to serve them, rather than, I think, so a very common cop-out that founders do, and I've been in the position of my product not working, when I'm like, oh, nobody's using this. Maybe if I just offer this free, people will start to use it. And what will that do? The wrong person will use it. You will chase the wrong, the wrong people, and then realize I wasted all this time because they don't have any money to pay me. So the ICP selection really is important. Again, so we also have a podcast and a YouTube channel. So I recommend listening to the GitLab story, where they talk about how the ICP selection for the product, the product offerings on the website refined. And a lot of companies make this refinement over time, even when they are PLG. The only other point I'll come to your question. The only other point I want to make is a lot of times, the biggest challenge is when PLG and sales-led are together, and you're trying to go after this big market on the bottom end, like big SMB market, and also sales-led, because then there is a lot of cannibalization issue. It is very common, and there was a company who I will not name that I was interviewing for. Their average yearly take rate from their PLG products were around like $1,500, $2,000. and 2 or 3% of their customer base was enterprise, and their average take rate there was 100K to 150K. So most of the revenue was made by enterprise, but this company thought of themselves as a PLG company. So at some point you have to cut someone. At some point you have to make the decision, like, I'm not going to go after this segment and go here. Because the more you sustain it, your PLG customers are cannibalizing the enterprise customers. And you have to see how you are actually going to continue to grow.
I just have a question from the table you had for the feature and the sizing that you were doing for SMB mid-market.
Yeah.
So I did see there are a few things like 24/7 customer support or dedicated customer success manager or several things that are provided as feature or a service or software. So I'm wondering, when you create a product, if the customer needs a support from you to run it or to solve the issues that you face, and then if you charge for it, where do you draw the boundary of whether it's morally wrong in a way that because your product should be really good that you shouldn't charge for these things, or is there a boundary like that?
I don't know. You're the product manager. I'm just a pricing person. I don't know morality. I just know what happens in the market, right? Some businesses will say, we are a very bespoke company, we will help you all the way. That takes money. Some products are just that good. Somebody else could come and disrupt you and say, we are not that expensive, we will just work out of the box. So this is not a game of morality. This is a game of what works and competition and market dynamics. Sorry, I couldn't answer a better question, but that is just yeah.
Yeah, so I had a question on, if you go one slide further, you have the proposed packages, what's included, what's an add-on, etc. And my question kind of ties to you bring this package to a customer and say you have your ICP and all that stuff. What if one of your supposedly ideal customers says and wants to negotiate for a specific feature? Do you just come back to this and say, hey, no, that's our enterprise plan, you have to get the enterprise plan, or you walk?
Yeah.
Or is there some wiggle room?
There's always negotiation, but it comes back to the thing I was discussing with Anshu about, is this a PLG motion or sales-led motion? Because in a sales-led motion, you may not publish this on the website, in which case everything is fair game. And very often that does happen in enterprise companies. Everything generally tends to be fair game. But if the more you act like that, the more your customer thinks that they can, they don't value your product. But if you are trying to go after a large market, then you may put it on the website, and then you're not going to have the time to negotiate, because negotiating is a sales efficiency problem again, right? You're trying to reach a big market, and nobody's negotiating with, hey, Slack, I'll pay you $1 less for my user. I have 10 users. This is the plan. You buy the plan or not. So it depends on how large the market is that you're trying to reach and the motion that you're running. Yeah. Okay. So we have, I think, half an hour left. Okay. So we discussed two important things. One is goals and segmentation. The second is packaging. Packaging, again, is where you will get a lot of the upside from the high willingness to pay customers. And packaging is very closely related to positioning. If you position your offer well and it solves their needs, it is more important that they feel that it solves their needs so that you can capture the value. The second important decision is the pricing metric decision. That is right after the packaging decision. But very often, when it comes to SaaS products, it is talked about as the only decision. Most people are talking about usage-based pricing today. Nobody talks about packaging, but packaging is where you make more money. But now we come to the metric decision, which is slightly more complicated. On the left-hand side of this slide, you have more fixed or more predictable pricing metrics. Before the cloud advent of software, things were on-prem. There are still a lot of older companies that are on-prem, and then they sell maintenance services. Per year you will have to pay for maintenance of the software, but you own the software. Then with Salesforce came things like named user licenses, concurrent user licenses. So a lot of contact center products sell based on this. As the market evolved, there are companies like Amazon who had to provide more usage-based pricing because they were sort of trying to be PG&E for cloud software. So they're providing S3 storage based on GB or EC2 based on compute resources. And now OpenAI is a similar sort of PG&E of AI, right? We are going to give you the plumbing of AI. You have to sell it in this way. You have to sell it based on usage-based pricing, and you connect to our APIs and you use this much. They also may have some bespoke services for them, may package differently, but broadly, they are moving more on the usage-based spectrum. So you have this spectrum of decisions, and even within the right side, which is highly variable pricing metrics, even there you may have a lot of candidates to choose from. But many times you may, now I'm going to actually in the next slide discuss how you make this determination. There are a lot of factors, and then I'll give you some case studies. So the first three factors of how to choose your pricing metric are more about what works for the customer. The next three are what works for you, and the final is, can you actually even implement it? And you're trying to balance the needs of the customer with your customer, basically, in making a pricing metric decision. I just say it's a pricing metric decision. I don't say it is X-based pricing, Y-based pricing. It is just a determination of what lever will align value the most. And you could have multiple levers. The first thing is risk perception. If customers think you are a risky bet, then you may, when you're a small company, many companies start off more with usage-based pricing, and they evolve more into predictable pricing models as they go on. And more predictable models will be user-based pricing, even it's just a different metric, but users don't fluctuate that much in a company, right? Employees in a company are more fixed. Second is mental anchors. So if you look at the Salesforce ecosystem, and ecosystems similar to this, like even contact center software, they're old segments. There are a lot of fixed competitors, leading players, and the segment hasn't evolved in some time. So if somebody builds an app on the Salesforce App Exchange, they're first going to be compared to the $165 per seat license for Salesforce, and you are capped by that. You are not going to be able to charge $300 per seat, and you will look weird if you're trying to charge that. You must be offering something outsized if you're going to do that. Companies like Gainsight, who offer customer success software, they're probably very valuable software, who plug into CRM, then have to charge less money than this software. They could be able to charge more money if they were not part of the Salesforce ecosystem. So anchoring limits your options. And if you're in a market, you have to see what the market is, because you may try the best usage-based metric, but if the customers buy a certain way, they buy a certain way. And that has happened to me in companies before. Number three is alignment with value. Do the customers believe that their success is aligned with the bill that they're getting from your service? So in my book, I talk about the mixed panel case study. They made this change. They made the change back for some reason which I'm not aware of. But they had something called events. How many events you track in this analytics product, you will charge. That's how they charge. But if the company is going out of business and you're giving them a bill of more events, they are going to churn, because they're like, well, my business is not doing well. So you have to find a way where the metric is more aligned to their success than to a term that you came up with, right? So events, credits, or some internal consumption variable, that is where the risk is, that it may not align to what the customer success is. And if it's not aligned, then the likelihood of churn is high. That's why they moved to monthly tracked users. They moved back to events for some reason, which I'm not sure about. But monthly tracked user is more proportional to how much your product or service will be used. And then you can say, as your product service is being used more, then you pay us more. So these are the first three. But you have to then balance it with what works for you. I'll start with number 5, then I'll go to number 4, because I just want to connect those dots. If you are charging, let's say in that case, per event, right? And let's say you have this AI product, and it is very expensive to run your computation or generate an answer. Let's say you are a generating AI product providing images or text or what have you. Then you may not have an option but to charge per event, and but to charge on a metric that is not very proportional to the customer success, because it is very expensive for you to run these models. And you will go out of business if you provide a user base or some metric, because they will use it so much that you will become margin negative. So you have to choose something that is going to work for you and the customer. And then consumption pattern. So, okay, this is the analogy of taxi versus buying a car, right? Many executives in software today have adopted usage-based pricing as a fad rather than a option on the table. When you choose something as a fad, you don't really realize why you are doing something. So if you buy a car, especially today, if there's a lot of work from home, you're not driving it all the time, but you still value having the car. You pay a lot of good money for the car. You like the car. You're not using it every day. Your usage of the car is very minimal. I only use my car for buying groceries. But if you may use Uber a lot, I use Uber a lot more than I use my car actually, because I travel quite a bit. So for Uber, I will, usage-based pricing makes sense. So a lot of people are going to buy your product, even a CRM product. How many people are logging into CRM every day? And now you say, my CRM product, I will charge on usage-based pricing. You may realize that your revenue tanks because that's not how they use your product. So you have to be mindful of the consumption of your product. Like, how do people perceive it? Is this a capability in their eyes, or is this more like Uber? Is it something more like PG&E? And that will determine, that'll have an influence of how you charge. Because if they're not using the product, why will you have usage-based pricing? Then competitive action. In your segment, if there's a new competitor that comes in, sometimes that will force you to move to another option, right? And sometimes you may not have an option. If your biggest competitor, even if it's a harebrained move, for some reason chooses a thing which you don't understand, the market would suddenly start to respond and react, and you may just not have an option but to also offer another way of charging for that software. So these are, the first three are more about customers, the next three are more about you, and the last one is, can you even build it? Which goes back to point number one, right? Can you influence the engineering team to build it quickly? Because there's engineering work that has to be done for instrumenting and metering anything. And if you have two metrics, then you even have to create sales tools, you have to create pricing calculators. There's overhead work that has to happen to provide this service. And then the invoice has to go to the customer, and it needs to be correct. It cannot be approximate, right? And if it is incorrect, then it creates further overhead. And I've been in those situations where we are dealing with customer arguments all the time, like, why did you bill me this? And we have to then go into the logs and figure out why the bill was a certain way. Okay, so some case studies. I, at some point, was working with this company, HelpShift, but I joined after they had made a transition. This is their model before I had joined. And later on, there was a company called Customer. Both of them made customer service software. But HelpShift originally only sold to B2C gaming applications. And at that point, Tushar, who was our head of sales, he said, I'm not going to sell this based on number of agents, which most contact center or customer service software was sold on. He said, for gaming applications, I'm going to sell to product managers, and we're going to charge based on 100 per 100,000 MAU. So the same thing that would have been sold for 20K or so in the sort of anchored space was then sold for much more, like millions for certain games. But customer could not do it because they were selling into a merchant and retailer market, and though they always thought of customer service software as being proportional to the number of agents, even if agents were fewer. So, and you'll see their CEO having podcasts talking about this. So this is the case of anchors. If your market is anchored, you have limited options and your upside is limited. If your market is not anchored, you can do more justification and you can find the right metric to align to the value that they get. Yeah.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So for the MAU-based pricing, how do you tell the company the value that they're gaining? Because with the agent-based pricing, it's simple, right? Like, you save this many agents, and you can
So gaming companies hardly have agents. They have very few agents. It's more about being proportional to their success. More MAU that they are serving is more revenue that they make. So the app scales with their success. If I have a gaming application with millions and millions of consumers, the more I am successful, the more I monetize them, I'd be willing to pay for using a product that takes a % of that. But in this case, they were. In your case, you would have to check whether that is true or not. Cost pattern. So with, hey, what happened? Okay, this is correct. On the left-hand side is more infrastructure, SaaS, and AI software, where as you get more and more customers, the value is and cost, this diagram doesn't change. The cost remains proportional to the value that people are getting. You don't get this term diminishing return. Like, the cost is not reducing. As you're serving more and more customers, you are paying more and more for API fees and what have you. Or even if you have internal models, your development costs are very high. But in application layer software, I think this era of software is dying, application layer software. And that is the key, I think, VC trend that VCs are also seeing, that if everything is going to have AI, then costs are also going to go up. And you can't keep just charging on the top, because in application layer of software, you had a lot of margins. And the more and more customers you served, your cost never went up. That gave you the ability to charge on whatever metric you wanted to charge per user or what have you. And it was all upside. Like many of these products have 96%, 99% gross margin. So it's all upside. But if you are creating a Gen AI product, you're creating images or what have you, you're creating text, you are going to not have that sort of margin. You maybe have 60, 70% margin, which is closer to actually consulting companies. And you have to be careful about the technology choices that you make to reduce the cost. And cost optimization starts to become very important. This is why usage-based pricing, it is inevitable in AI companies, because one, the users, you're going to get the users fired. You can't charge by users. And number two, it's expensive. So you have to be proportional to your cost in some way. Now, Moore's law still applies to this. AI costs are reducing a lot. What is true today may not be true in 2 years. And then you may still have very high margins. But at the moment, the margins are not that high. Yeah.
By application SaaS, do you mean like non-cloud based?
I mean cloud-based, but application layer is like CRM, Gmail, the type of examples I gave you, contact center. Infrastructure products are cloud APIs by which you will build your software, right? That's closer to the hardware. Or AI companies that are using these AI APIs. So they're intensive, they're compute intensive and expensive. So generative AI examples, this is what is happening, right? These companies are all generative AI companies. And they may have these plans and certain price points, but these are not per user. They're selling bundles of credits, and credits are actually like, you can buy this block of usage for me this much, then I'll give you a little bit of volume discount on the next segment. And this is how they're charging, because they have high costs, right? They would like to charge by user as well. It makes the discussion easier, but they can't. So they sell in bundles of usage. All right, we discussed Acme, right? I'm going to give you my suggestions for what Acme should price their product on, but I want you to tell me, give me some examples. 15, yeah. Give me some example metrics for Acme AI's product. What should be the metric? I told you that user counts are reducing. I also told you that they are anchored, and this is a new sort of technology, right? It's an AI product, so they have high costs as well.
Tied to the success of their customers.
Give me the metric.
I mean, like the MAU, like
okay.
I think that could be
okay. 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 That's going to be in my next slide.
Maybe chat prompts, because they have to pay per chat to OpenAI.
Paper processing usage. Okay.
Yeah, but each prompt, not just like a user.
Each prompt, okay, got it. Okay. So it's enough to whet your appetite. So basically, what I would do is I would make a candidate list of all of my metrics, and I would rate them based on what works. So Zendesk came out with outcome-based pricing recently. Outcome-based is just another, like, based on number of cases resolved. The problem with resolution, the good parts about resolution is customer will say, yes, you are resolving this for me. I will pay only when my thing is resolved. The problem is that there is going to be debate on what is a resolution. And they are going to be stuck in that for some time. And you do not know the cost for resolution, because there is going to be a high variability. There are going to be simple cases, and there are going to be more expensive, complex cases. So it is an option that some companies are doing. This is now what is called outcome-based, right? I'll deliver this outcome, and you pay me this based on the outcome. It is still on the leading edge. It's not proven that this will work. Some companies are going to try it. If it works, good, but there's going to be a lot more debate and discussion with sales teams and customer success teams that, hey, you charge me this much, but I don't think I got the outcome, and it opens up a can of worms. You can have per bot response, which is similar to the prompt. But the problem is it's very disjoint from value. I can have so many bot responses, and how will a budgeting team even figure out how many bot responses? How will they go to their managers and make a case that this is how many bot responses we are buying? It becomes very hard. And then there is the MAU, which I feel actually is more well balanced, but this is all subjective. We have to test this in the market. But MAU is closer to value, but it is not as close as outcome. But you can measure the cost. You can measure other things a little bit better. It's definitely much more implemented. Implementation of MAU is much easier than implementation of resolution, because resolution, you have to have much more engineering to figure out feedback mechanisms for resolution. This requires more product engineering work. Then MAUs just have to meter one thing, right? So I'm just saying that, again, even this is an art. You have to make a list. You have to look at all of the factors and not be dogmatic. But this is one place where I feel like people think this is an easy selection for products. It is not an easy selection. And especially in the case of Gen AI products, it can easily be a wrong selection because it is so expensive. Or
on the previous slide, where do you accommodate for COGS?
Proportional to cost.
I see. Okay. So in the MAU, you're not considering the COGS at all. Is that the case?
I think it's more on the. I said it's a question. I don't really know the answer, but we'll have to run some statistics to figure out cost. It's MAU for the end customer. So we'll have to build a model at least internally to have that, and then we'll know how much it is or not. All right. So fourth is the easier decision, price points. So, and this is, I think, more taught in business school literature, but there are things like Veblen goods where you can go sell a cheap software, make it user-based, sell it online, and then you can go after the SMB customers or merchants or Shopify stores, which are very cheap products. And the same product sold in a Shopify store can be sold to a Nike, can be sold to a top retailer, Sephora, and all of those people. And they will not pay so cheap. If it is so cheap, they will not pay for it. They will not trust that it is going to offer value. It has to be packaged in a way. And the Veblen goods are where the price increases, their propensity to pay increases, right? So if you are selling to government, if you're selling to financial services, insurance, they are going to only become interested and have a conversation if the price point is high. A month ago, or a few weeks ago, I went to SaaS Boomi, and founders were sharing these war stories where they were with an advisor, and the advisor said, add 2 zeros next to your proposal because you're looking like an idiot. Right? I found that was very interesting because literally you cannot win the deal if you're cheap, right? And they're trying to be cheap so that they can win the deal. So this is a true thing in software. So you'll make a hypothesis for your packaging, pricing metric, and price point. All of this, you will make a hypothesis. You will consider competition. You will consider market feedback and what you know. And then you can test it. There are primary research-based methods. If you go to my YouTube channel, we show a way in which we do a structured interview process with customers. And then we can compile the results and tell customers. It's more better for enterprise companies because you have to explain this is the different feature, this is the value, and so on, and understand a lot more. But when it comes to more PLG companies and closer to B2C companies, then you can do Van Westendorp surveys, which is just you get a range for how much they're willing to pay. You can do max diff, or you can do conjoint. Now, conjoints, a lot of pricing consultants do in SaaS. But the problem with conjoint is it has to be a very simple, explainable product. If you apply it to the wrong company, you will waste. It's very expensive to generate that sample size and data. You may waste up to 100K or 50 to 100K, and the results may not be usable. And I'm working with customers who have told me that a company came, they did this was not very valuable to us. So always in B2B, I would always lean more into primary research with some lightweight surveying. For B2C and more online PLG, I will then go to more surveying methods where the product is either more simple or there is a large market that we have to test. How will you set Acme AI's price points? Or how will you even create a hypothesis?
Work with your first customer and just you hopefully have a good relationship to understand their business and figure out how much they're saving from that and use that
Okay.
value calculation as a
That's fair, but there's one more answer I'm looking on for Acme Eye. So I told you that there are in an existing category, so mental anchors will be a problem. That's the only thing I wanted to remind you. So that is good for blue ocean environments where you are doing things from scratch. But if you come up with this much as value and they say, well, I get this much from competition, they're not going to go, they're not going to go that high. All right, so this was one of the final slides. So operationalization, you have to ingest data, transform data, have it available real time, send it to a billing system, choose the right billing system, then send invoices. Product catalog needs to be available in CRM. You probably need a CPQ system, depending on the size of your business. And you can't mess any of this up. So all these decisions have to be implemented. And if product and engineering will not do it, then sales will do whatever they can to sell. And then you will not have the nice things that you want. Common issues. Okay, so this is the last slide. Early founders will start with like this good, better, best, and not correlate to their segments because they will not know the segments, and that is okay. When you're starting out, when you're 0 to 1, there's some people 0 to 1. You may not have the segment. You have to be in product market fit stage and assess product market fit for a while before you get to pricing. When I talk to companies that are still in product market fit stage, I will often say, you don't talk to me, you don't need a consultant, you figure out your product market fit and you try to experiment. Experimentation is not bad. You make the wrong mistakes, you figure all of that out, then pricing will help you scale. Where pricing doesn't come before product market fit. So they will, but the problem is they will stick to this good, better, best for later after having figured it out. That is the problem. And they have to, at some point, as soon as they figure out the segmentation, they have to evolve that packaging. Very often, founders will give away too much in their freemium plans. And you'll see PLG companies being heavily biased towards their free plans and cheaper plans if they're selling to developers or things like that. And later on, they have to move the other direction and start to monetize their enterprise customers. And they may have to get rid of some free customers to do that. So this is the main issues with mid-stage companies will maybe not optimizing their packages. They might be too loose or too tight, and they forget they're monetizing their current customer base. Current customer base becomes very important after a certain phase of growth, and a lot of revenue just comes from the current customer base. And this is kudos to Patrick Campbell, who was from Price Intelligently. They sold their company. This is the number one point they made, that your customer acquisition costs are negligible from your current customer base. This is where the CAC, the LTV to CAC ratio is very high. And it is the most overlooked because all work, all pricing exercises, all enablement happens for new customers, right? So upsell and growth really matters a lot. And then finally, professional services. You're all product managers, but customers are buying the whole product. They're buying services too. And many times the average sales prices you can get for your overall product is much higher when a service is involved, because big companies may not have uniquely talented people to do a specific thing that you may know how to do. And you package it up together, that could double or triple your price point or even more. And I'm working with a customer that has that dynamic right now. So if professional services should be monetized, especially if they're specialized. All right, so always start with understand where you are as a company and understand your customers. That is the key takeaway. And the structure trumps the price point at all times. So that's it. So happy to take any more questions.
On the price point, you said anchor to, if other competitors are offering a much lower price point, then you might not be able to go much further.
Yeah.
What's stopping Acme from being able to set a very high price point and have that Veblen effect, where they're like, oh, we have such a high price point, customers think we're so much better?
It's not just so this is the distinction between correlation and causation. You can't just set a high price point and then change perception. If you are going to sell a Ferrari, you have to make a Ferrari too. And your product needs to be that good as well, right? It has to deliver the value, both perceived value and real value. So yes, you can increase price point, but it better be a 10x product. If it is a 10x product, then you can do that. And by the way, a person I really like in the realm of like economics of SaaS is Tomas Tangos. He's a popular venture capitalist, and he did a study of these new usage-based products, and he said they're actually charging much higher multiples of the base price on the usage for these AI products than you would expect. And if you go to his LinkedIn page, and people have quoted him on that as well. So it goes up to 60-70% of the base fee of that SaaS product. And so that is where they're now claiming that we will solve all of these things for you. And because of the efficiency gains or because of the value, now you pay us more. So there are companies that are now saying that if this is a disruptive product, then you have to pay us more because you'll